Good evening and welcome to our fourth reading of the Low Residency MFA program at Mississippi University for Women at the full residency in summer 2025. We have another great panel of four readers this evening. Our two full residency student readers, Gwynnedra Vance, Callie Tolman. Our faculty reader will be Fentress. And our thesis reader, also at the residency this week, is Prestridge, who successfully defended this afternoon. As usual, I'll ask you to give a brief introduction when you come up to speak. So, Gwyn, if you'll start us off.
Hello, my name is Gwynnedra. The piece I'm going to be reading is something I wrote for one of my classes last semester. It's about my great-grandmother. All right, I'll go ahead and start. Mother dearest, during her funeral, after she decided to go back home at the age of 96, I recalled what my mom had said to her years ago. Laugh about the things you said when you were alive. Even now, as I try to keep from crying, I'm still laughing at all the memories she's left behind. One of my biggest regrets is never asking Medea personal questions. Most of the things I know about her have come from other people. At the age of 28, I've known Medea most of my life. It's been 5 years since she's passed. I know she was born April 27, 1923, and she's originally from Silver City, Mississippi. When she decided to move to Skeene, Mississippi, I don't know when, but I know she married a man 10 years older than her when she was 16 to leave her family behind. She didn't have the best of stepfathers. I first met Medea November 4th, 1996. She held me as I gave out a long cry and started to drift off to sleep. Poor baby must have been tired. She said after I was born, my mom told me the story when Medea first held me. She also stated, if anyone was tired, it's me. You would come out for 2 days. Medea was a tall woman who had strong and gentle hands and kind eyes for everyone. She was the mother of our church, and I loved having the front row spotlight when I was a kid, beaming with pride as I sat next to my Medea while she fed me snacks. Even though she was technically my great-grandmother, I referred to Medea as my grandmother because that's who she was to me. She was someone I went to when I was tired of my parents. She always took my side, and even the rare times I was wrong. She'd gently correct me. Whatever I wanted, I got. Toys, not so much, but books, she piled on me. My parents would say they don't know where I got my book-buying obsession from, but I know. It was from an old woman who never said no to learning. One of my funniest memories told to me by my mom was how I caused Medea to have a near panic when I was a baby. Like most babies, I didn't mean to do any of it, so it honestly wasn't my fault. Even as a baby, I was a heavy sleeper. I had informed Medea of my wonderful sleeping habits, where I stayed asleep all night long until someone woke me up in the morning. She had gotten up several times throughout the night to check on me, and there I was, just sleeping away. Then when I woke up, of course I needed to have something to drink. I was starving from not waking up all night. Yet Medea did the correct thing you do with babies when they wake up. You change their diapers. I, unfortunately, was not having it. I screamed bloody murder until she quickly gave me my bottle and I calmed down as if nothing happened. Another funny memory was about fries. When I was old enough to eat solid foods, my favorite thing to eat was French fries, so this meant my favorite place to go was McDonald's. As my mom would drive off from the drive-thru, Medea would take out the fries. Before giving them to me, she would cool them off in front of the air vents of the car, and then give me one fry for each of my tiny fists. My mom said she would have to work fast because I would, and still do, inhale those fries. It took her a minute, though, to teach me to unclench my fist to actually finish the fries. Fast food wasn't mainly what she fed us because it was seen as a treat anytime we went to visit her. The best days were when we went to see her during the week, when she knew we were coming on a random day after school or on Wednesday after Bible class. She would have a pot of spaghetti and fish with green beans, or smothered pork chop with buttery mashed potatoes and corn, or even pinto beans with cornbread and baked chicken. My favorite thing for her to cook was spaghetti stew. To this day, the way she made it was my favorite. She'd start with a metal pot and add enough oil to glaze the bottom. Then she'd turn the heat on to warm the pot up, as she chopped the stew meat into bite-sized pieces. She then diced up the onions that would fry as the beef cooked. She'd add black pepper and salt to season. When she added the water, the grease would float to the top. The water, now murky, looked like a swamp. The murky water looked more appetizing when she added tomato sauce. Then she break the spaghetti noodles up and placed them in a pot. She added more salt and pepper. The whole house would smell of peppery tomatoes. Even after all these years, I can never seem to perfect her recipe. The meat never tender enough, or the broth too peppery. One day my cousin Tiffany came to visit, and she had put on some weight. It's honestly normal for people to put on weight when they first move out. It's kind of expected. A few of us were at my great aunt's house where Medea now lived with her. Tiffany had wanted to take a picture of Medea because she didn't have one with just her and Medea in it. I will take this time to brag about the countless pictures I have with just Medea and I. My favorite is on my phone when I was going through a bank phase. When Tiffany sat down next to Medea, she said, "Oh, baby, you done made me stand there sunk like the Titanic." We all paused, and we all stood there and looked at her before bursting out with laughter. She just sat there and looked at us. It wasn't really funny, but it was the fact that she was so serious that's what made it funny. No one but her would have decided to say that. Another situation happened when I was younger. My mom loves to laugh about this one because it involves her. She had just gotten a big chop and cut off the perm from her hair. I thought she looked so cool with her close cropped hair. She even started to wear more makeup, which piqued my interest in how I looked. She had always taken care of herself and decided to be doing it, and she seemed to be doing it much more often when she had cut her hair. Well, during a trip to see Medea, there was this first time we were going to see it was the first time she was going to see my mom after she's had her hair cut the previous Saturday. It started like any regular time. We walked in with our hellos. My brother and I ran to hug her and see what she was cooking. My nose remembers smelling the scent of fried chicken and seasoned greens and cornbread. My mom, as soon as Medea looked at her, figured that she had her hair pulled back into a ponytail. She had walked closer. Then when Medea walked closer, she noticed my mom didn't have a ponytail or bun behind her head. She walked closer and stared hard at my mom's head. My mom was trying hard not to laugh. While this was happening, the tears sprung up in her eyes. Her breathing came in short spurts as she asked Medea what she was doing. Then Medea looked over at my brother and I as we were trying to hold in our laughter as well and said, "Y'all seen your mama?" "Yeah," she responded. "They live with me, don't they?" I could tell she was losing her battle with laughter. My mom couldn't hold it back anymore and burst out laughing. Medea didn't seem too pleased and looked at my mom like she was being unnecessarily silly. "You know, you sure look like a man by the head." That was it for us all. We laughed until our sides hurt. One of the saddest memories I had of Medea is when we realized that she had developed dementia. I was in first year of college when it was confirmed. Her memory was starting to decline some, but we all assumed it was because of her age and the fact that she had hip surgery a couple years prior. She had to move to my aunt's house because everyone was worried about her safety. After that decision, even now, my mom wonders if they should have left her to be independent. Maybe it would have prevented from some of the things that had happened. I honestly wasn't thinking much about it at first. I was starting college and moving 3 hours away from home for the first time in my life. This was a new start. I hadn't thought much about it because Medea was always there for every new thing happening in my life. I hadn't planned on her declining health, nor her declining memory, forgetting everything we had been through together. As the years went on, she forgot more and more and became confused. She did remember the one she saw every day, but then she started to confuse us. It seemed she was mainly in a time of when she was raising my mom, because she either referred to my mom as the baby or spoke to me if I was her. It's understandable. I do look like her, just a rounder version. The last 3 or 2 years of her life wasn't easy. Even with the nurse going to my great aunt's house every day to help in the mornings, everyone was tired and hope was low, especially after her second fall that broke her hip. Everything declined so fast. Even though I knew it was coming, I was scared for her to die. I know it may sound selfish, but Medea had always been there. She was the rock and comfort I always needed. I didn't know a world without her in it. Every stage of my life was supposed to have her there. Yet I felt she was suffering, and I hated to see her so confused and afraid. I didn't want her to think we were lying to her or keeping her from doing what she wanted. Everything we did was for her safety. There was a thought that I just hated to see her so dependent on others. I wanted to remember her as the woman who didn't need anyone, the sassy-mouthed woman who said what she wanted when she wanted, the woman who knew what to do in any situation, the one I grew to idolize. I thought that if God couldn't make her better, the least he could do was to take her home so she could be at peace. I had already started to grieve her. I grieved the time we never got to spend together. I grieved the questions I couldn't ask her, the wisdom that was now lost to me. I grieved the fact she wouldn't be able to attend my wedding and complain to my mom about the white man I'd married, but tell me that as long as I was happy and he treated me right, she was happy. I grieved, and honestly, I'm still grieving. January 4, 2020 is a day I don't want to remember. The day that sweet chariot swung low to carry her home. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Callie Tolman, and I'd like to say, hi Bev! Tonight I'll be reading New Dixieland. I entered this world barreling across the countryside, traveling 50 miles an hour. Thomas, the baby is coming, Anne yelled. Sweat was streaming down her pale face. Her cheeks billowed with air as she attempted to manage her contractions. Her body wilted on the bench. She no longer could sit upright. She saw Thomas, his stride calm, and the confidence steadied her. He had gone to ask how long it would take until they reached the next stop. It's too soon, Anne. He sat beside her, took up her hand, bringing it to her lips for a kiss. The conductor said it'll be another hour before we reach the next station, his voice full of love. Thomas, go get help. Find a woman, any woman. Her face contorted with the pain of another contraction. In her 7th month of pregnancy, they were moving from Boston to their new home in Kearney, Missouri. Their choice to go west came easily. The overcrowded streets and the cholera epidemic were sweeping the nation, but Boston was hit especially hard in their Irish neighborhood, Dorchester. My father's family arrived in America in 1764 from Tyrone, Ulster, North Ireland, as indentured servants. They worked for the Ridley family in Northampton, Maryland, where they were put to work farming and iron making. After the Revolutionary War, his family was able to escape and make their way north to Boston. Where Daddy met Mama. My mother's family was filled with educators, and they made the transition from Ireland to America in 1802, from Donegal, Ulster, North Ireland, establishing themselves in Boston. On rainy days, my mother would tell me these origin stories about how we were all born to new lands. Then she would pull out a letter to remind me of how my journey started. Her soft soprano voice was steady, and when she embellished, it would sink deeper, stiffening, especially when she played Uncle Roy's voice. Liberty, Missouri, 27 September 1850. My dearest niece Anne, I'm pleased to hear the news of your nuptials. As a wedding present, I have deeded a parcel of land in your name in Clay County, Missouri, next to my own. I've heard news that Thomas is a farm stock from the old country. We need men like him here to bring in the crops. The parcel of land is covered with hemp fields as far as the eye can see. Your ever-loving Uncle Roy, Indian agent. Then she folded it neatly. Her fingers lingered along the edges of the pages, and she placed the letter in a cigar box with the rest of her valuables. Nothing can stop you, she said. 13 years later, my life had dulled from those first few moments. Each day, an endless stream of tasks. I felt loved until my body became an object. They were talking again last night. Daddy had been noticing my body changing. He knew I'd be a woman soon. Finding a husband was important, but I was scared. I knew other girls who married at 13, but I didn't want to be one of them. I didn't even like babies. Mama said, "Give it more time, Thomas. And I need help on this farm. Kiln isn't big enough to do much good. He's a creative boy and good with his hands, but his body is small. He's 8 and can't even lift the plow. Grace is our best chance at saving this place." Tears welled in my eyes. Was I an animal for breeding? The falling drops rolled over my plump cheeks and hit my pillow like rain, thudding on the stiff cotton bedding. Fear crept into my body, a stillness building before the storm of womanhood. I wanted to flee, but I was numbed, knowing my duty as a daughter. I lay in bed until the sun came up. My belly growled while I lay on my husk-filled mattress. The rustle and the sounds of my stomach made sad, hollow music. Chores would be tough today because I did not sleep. As the morning light came upon my freckled face, its warmth did not help me stir. The things were going to change soon, and everyone would see me differently. Dishes clattered as I cleared the table after breakfast. They bickered as I gathered them into my stubby arms and I hugged them to my chest. "Be careful," Mama's voice sang in my ears. The voice brought me back to reality and calm. The plates stacked like sheets of paper. They were flat, empty, because there was never anything left on them to make them teeter. We had just enough to fill our bellies, not one bit more. I stacked them high as I could so I could make one trip to the sink that was waiting, filled with scalding water, frothy from the tallow soap Mama and I made each winter. Mama always added dried spearmint to our boiling vat so it would smell fresh. The mint lingered, clean like spring, drifted to me in the dining room. I loved the smell, but it reminded me of each time I made it. I hated making soap. I got burned every time by the splattering of lye and hot water that left splotches and welts that lasted for months. The floor creaked below my feet, reverberating every movement. A chorus of complaints mimicked our path around the table each day. Daddy would say, "One day it'll give up the strength to hold our family and crash into the dirt." I dreamed of days when the crash would come, a great splintering of brittle wood, groans uttered, boards cracked into sharp edges pointed at our faces, giving me one more reason to flee. I could finally be free of this farm. I would never have to marry.
I'm going to read from the piece that I was mentioning this afternoon that was, it was published in Salvation South about 2 weeks ago on ambitious middle-aged women. And it's about, the cover of my book is this self-portrait by Dusty Von J. And so look at her gaze. She's not looking at the viewer, she's looking away. In this Southern Modern exhibit that's been going around the South for 2 years, it was heralded in the New York Times as a critic's choice. The text by it says that her eyes are looking away because she's melancholy because her husband died 7 years ago. Well, I'm sure she was sad, but I just question, talk about male gaze. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to read a little because Megan's the star tonight. It's one of the final Saturdays of the retrospective on Dusty Bon J. the Mississippi-born mid-century New York gallery regular whose work is back in attention. My sandal soles slap on the museum's glossy linoleum, percussion over the murmurs of other exhibit goers. I wind around a corner and come to her 1943 self-portrait. My sandals, along with the rest of me, stop. If artists' self-portraits are strategies and posturings, which they have been for centuries, what does the oil say about Bonjay? Her self-portrait says plenty to me. First, it chucks the standard of a prim, proper portrait for a prim, privileged woman, a framed canvas membership card to verify a female spot in her time and place's power structure. With her pick of elphaba green for under eyes and terracotta juts of cubist cheekbones, the bona fides of belonging aren't Bonjay's message. She actually was upper crust South, born in Eunice Lyle Sweatman, into a Biloxi banking family who envisioned her in a smaller life than the one she built for herself as Dusty Bonjay. But for me, there's more to the portrait than a story of a woman poking the patriarchy. The second idea spills out when I stare at the painting's eyes. The eyes don't stare back. That's what grabs me, how the portrait preemptively declines to meet my stare. I know that move. So does any middle-aged woman with work to do. Fixated makers, painters, musicians, or like me, writers, intent on taking charge of the time they have to do their work. The painting is a portal. I think the self-portrait's averted eyes signal a creator particularly skilled at fending off interruption. Dodging direct eye contact with the viewer is about an artist, a painter in this case, with a midlife woman's vigilance over life's practical pulls, safeguarding her train of thought so she can create. Bonjay breaks with both the standard issue portrait and standard issue assumptions about what a middle-aged woman ought to be, that is, available for others' needs and wants above all. Her priorities aren't identical to most of life going on around her, not if she is to paint, not if her work is to be included in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art, which happened to Bonjay in 1963 when she was 60 years old. I have work to do too. My book came out 18 months ago, and I'm working on another. I co-wrote a documentary film headed to public television broadcast. I run an online nonprofit that publishes first-person school accounts from the post-1970 South. I teach writing. None of this is extraordinary news, of course, but it's just background to say I'm busy. Here's the thing. Ahead of slogging through bad drafts and better ones, ahead of phrase-level fine-tuning, a writer first has to hollow out the hours to work. I don't know Bonjay's time-minding methods beyond the look of determination in her self-portrait side eyes. I do know my own ground rules. Keep weekday mornings for new writing, afternoons for paying projects. Grocery store and gym trips happen after 8 p.m. when both are deserted and quicker undertakings. Check off life tasks simultaneously. Start the washing machine, unload the dishwasher, and locate the little vial of charcoal bits under the lavatory for the weekly face scrub while talking. Schedule classes after 5 p.m. I just heard from a Northeast Mississippi painter with another tactic. The great-great-aunt of my friend, the memoirist Marion Barnwell, kept a whip beside her when she painted to scare her children off from interrupting her at the Marion is one of the women writers I know over age 50 with recent books out. Jacqueline Allen Trimble, Ethel Morgan Smith, Minrose Gwynn, Di Rushing, Jerry Wilson, Teresa Nicholas, Julie Whitehead, Karen Hinton, and Susan Allen Ford. Everyone I've named here is successful. We all also lived a foreground silence, author Tilly Olson's term for a comparatively long time before a writer comes to print. In her book Silences, Tilly Olson examines the age-old cause, practicalities like jobs, many career teachers on that list, and caring for family, parameters that can affect any creator, but historically slow down women most of all. Life comes in seasons. The chapter's clearer to see in hindsight. Post-college, I was a reporter, chuffed to get a paycheck to write. Through my 20s, my writing got better and life progressively and happily more complicated. Along with late-night deadlines at the state capitol, there was marriage at 25 and a daughter when I was 29. In my 30s, I swapped my job as a State House reporter for the Gulfport Biloxi Sun-Herald for freelance work. I got time at home with my 3-year-old daughter as the stamp of deadlines lingered in my neurons. Every night I typed in my dreams, but woke up amazed I wasn't due at 9 a.m. on the 4th floor of the Mississippi Capitol press room. Yet I worried about what was happening to me. I cranked out bank reports and short type pieces for the Catfish Journal, writing jobs that I'd previously have considered eye rollers. I deteriorated with the short trade gigs. At the computer, my word flow thinned and my finished prose turned choppier. Back then, I'd yet to read Olson's Silences, which examines the falling dominoes that can keep women writers stunted or stop them outright. Even so, I saw I was deteriorating. My brain fumbled for wording, and the results lacked the crispness I'd had back in the press room. I considered myself kind of a keyboarding Fantine from Les Miserables on the sure downward slide. The difference between the fictional Fantine and the Paris underbelly me, besides 2 centuries and a mouthful of teeth, was that I had fair odds to push back. I didn't push back much, though. If asked, and no one did, I could have explained how in opting to write puff pieces about banks and update some catfish antibiotics, I was choosing to be an available family member I wanted to be, slack-absorbing wife of a husband out of town frequently, and home-front single parent to our by then 2 elementary-age daughters. What's more, my mother had heart failure and Jackson cardiology appointments. All these were authentic logistics. What I didn't notice was that all the caretaking didn't necessarily have to be a trade-off with my capacity to write. That's not to say I didn't choose to limit my writing hours myself. I did. Yet meanwhile, there was no interest from my husband or even my mother on how my writing life was wilting by the year. My mother's puzzlement over my persisting ambition was an echo of her own willing retreat inside the house as a 1950s homemaker. Before, she'd been a greatest generation college graduate who had quit her 1940s Mississippi algebra teacher job to join the World War II Navy waves. She collected a second college degree in accounting on the GI Bill and was an in-demand bookkeeper in our Delta town. Yet post-motherhood, she never worked outside the home again. In the post-war era, for a mother to work meant her husband couldn't support his family, she said. Hers could, and so could mine, meaning we had both won the lottery. "The Lord is blessing you," she said to me in the kitchen one day a minute. Didn't I have enough to do already besides figuring out how to write a novel? My husband's antagonism turned overt. In my memoir, his pseudonym is Gus, so let's stick with that. Already in his jacket and tie on the way out the door to work, Gus spotted a box of business cards I'd ordered that were on the kitchen counter. He took one in his fingers, waved it high, and laughed at the idea. "You haven't worked in years." I blinked. Then and now, when I don't like reality, my default is simply to pretend that what I didn't want to hear isn't being said. It's been the go-to mental flex for the white Southern culture in general for centuries. Arranging facts as optimally as possible in my head made it a snug, invitation-only place to stay when I didn't like the way things were going in the outer oxygen. "You know, if you were supposed to write a book, you would have already," he said. I seethed inside. In my 46-year-old skull, a roll of paper unfurled, clunking to the floor, a mile-long list of years of meals, carpools, and just generally giving a rip I'd handled before thinking I had spare time to write. Why didn't I respond to Gus? Even 100% wimp that I was, I refused to debate if I remained a writer. The full truth extended even further. I also didn't want to ignite a confrontation. By that, I mean I didn't want to ignite a confrontation inside me when I wasn't ready for the possible cost. Like Dusty Bonjay and her elastic gaze, anyone who chooses to look away is acknowledging there's something she doesn't want to see. Would Gus and I split if I thought too much about his unexpected pushback to my ambition? What did that say? The moment revealed a chasm whether I chose to dwell on it or not. Meanwhile, it wasn't as if anyone wanted to publish what little writing I produced. No one supports a creator like herself. It's a doer's first task to rally her belief in her art. My confidence wobbled without the signifying backup of an editor and a paycheck. Family uplift, Gus's of course, would have been vocational life support then. He had another thought. You in writing, why don't you paint? You're good at painting. I blinked again. Dusty Bungay painted from her depths. That's how writing felt to me. I suspected Gus liked the idea of me as a contemporary Victorian dabbler in her parlor, capturing a bowl of oranges on campus. Victorian wives were expected to engage in an accomplishment, either in painting or music. They tinkered at a practice, but never too seriously. The knot in my gut registered Gus's sabotage, whether my eyes lingered on the evidence or not. I couldn't wrap my head around Gus's resentment. We were simpatico solid liberals. Over drinks at Jackson parties, he loved a good rumble about equality and abortion rights with any right-winger ready to spar. If I was gaslit by Gus's attitude, I was by 90s sexism in general. Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky were the decade's poster fair for how a man could talk women's rights in public and expect no consequences in his actions in private. That echoed inside our house. We slogged along until we didn't anymore. It's your job to save yourself, since the cavalry ain't coming. It didn't for me. A tornado did, though. That's what happens at midlife, a surprise that really shouldn't be one. I'd lived the same parameters for nearly 2 decades. For young families, the endless stretch of days and years of routines falsely lulls 40-somethings into thinking adulthood is a fixed state. Then comes the decade's second half, and despite the years of sameness and child rearing, new chapters arrive. For me, in a matter of months, I was 48, had 2 nearly grown daughters, a recently deceased mother, and a resignation that our marriage lacked the capacity to keep going. We divorced. My world morphed. I got a job as a rookie high school French teacher with school hours to match my younger daughters. Things were quieter, but truthfully, I stepped back too. I turned less available to my teenagers. In a transparently Freudian huff, I took months to set out family photos in my new house. I gave up on the unfinished novel, but not on writing something deeper than breaking news about catfish. I typed. I thought, and I typed some more. I knocked the rust off my craft. At 51, I had a piece in the New York Times Modern Love section, an MFA degree at 52, a string of essays in national publications as my 50s rolled along. I got a grad-level job teaching writing at 62 and a book at 67. Maybe Gus was right as far as he called it. Maybe if I was supposed to have written a book before 50, I would have. But what neither of us considered were the second half years and the head reorganization that comes along with them. A room of one's own is more than a set of walls and a door with a good lock. There's auspicious timing and a recharged command of your gaze.
Hi y'all, my name is Prestridge, and I'd like to read to you if I could. Before I start, I'd really like to take a second. I'm a secret sap, so I'd really like to take a second to just say a few thank yous to my friends here and my committee at the MFA program. Yes, you helped me with my writing, but you pushed me to be okay with taking up space. And that's a pretty big deal for me. And I'd like to thank my family, my Christopher back there. Because during this whole process, he wanted it for me when, let's be honest, he could have easily just wanted something for himself and been justified. And then I'd really, really like to thank L&M. You helped me not only build up a pretty good collection, but you built up a self-esteem I never had. So thank you. So one more time, my name's Megan Prestridge, and I'd really like to read to you. This is from Dirtwater Revival and other mostly true stories. This is called Dirtwater Revival. I was 6 years old when my life ended. That's a real shame, dying at 6 years old. Dying when you've only known how to wipe your own butt for a year or two, maybe. Not even enough time to really get good at it. I was 6 years, 9 months, and 17 days old to be exact. I'd give you the minutes and hours and such, but math's not my strongest suit. My last math teacher in school didn't come to work too much on account of her brother was on trial for murdering his mistress. Mama and Billy had split long before all this. I don't know if he'd stayed with us longer than he'd stayed with his other wives and daughters, but I wouldn't guess it. My daddy was a runner, not by profession, that was plumbing, but by nature. I'm dang near middling age, and I still wrestle with the pissy thoughts as to why Aaron and I were so bad he had to haul off and run his happy tail back to Grant Parish. I know it wasn't us, though. If memory serves, him and my mama hated each other's guts. She acted like she couldn't stand the ground he walked on. She always spoke of him with such disgust and hate, like she just took a swig of some soured sweet tea. The way I see it, though, she obviously liked him well enough at least 2 times. It honestly wouldn't have turned out much better for us if he'd stayed or not. Roger wasn't much of a prize, especially after July 4th, 1999. That's the day I died. Now don't be too sad for me. I didn't know too much about myself in 99. I know I'd broken my leg on my Uncle Kevin's trampoline. And when I say I broke my leg, I mean old Brandon Cootie was chasing my sister Erin on the trampoline, thought I was in his way, so he pushed me down. And I landed in between the springs, and my leg subsequently was broken. My cousin Joey and his best friend Sean held Brandon down while my sister beat him up. After Uncle Kevin and Aunt Ramona took me inside to check me out, Mama and Roger were at the casino or some other place. I do remember them fussing me, telling me to stop it and just stand up. I was 6 and my leg was broken pretty bad. How in the hell am I going to just stand up? I hear Mama laugh a little when she tells this story about how they realized after about an hour when I didn't let up on the broken leg bit that maybe I was actually hurt. I know I have a flair for the dramatic, but why would I fake breaking my leg? I was perfectly happy with 2 unbroken legs, just bouncing in my little spot on the trampoline. I wasn't allowed to get on the trampoline for the rest of my childhood, as if I was the one that pushed me down and broke my own leg. That is a fact. So I do remember that much. In 99, I'd been in 1st grade. Miss Colvin was my teacher, and she had poofy reddish-brown hair that you could see through the sunlight just a little bit if it hit it just right. It was the shape of a helmet. Not a football helmet, but a pretty helmet. I'm not sure what you'd consider a pretty helmet, but I can't rightly say a halo because it didn't look like that either. It wasn't off-putting or clunky. She looked like a real nice, fashionable lady from the Deep South in the 90s. Her dress had those bibs and frillies like the mama off of Growing Pains. I remember she was reading that state test to us that spring. I was half asleep behind my little manila folder privacy shield when she told us that if we didn't know what that lima bean looking thing was in our testing booklet, it was called a kidney. I remember she shifted her butt side to side in her chair and said, "It's like these things right here. They help you pee." She was touching her butt cheeks. I thought that was the wildest thing, but I got the answer right. I didn't quite understand what a kidney was or how it helped you pee, but if they were your butt cheeks, like Miss Colvin pointed out, I just trusted her on it. I knew my butt cheeks helped me poo because you squeezed them and such. But I didn't know butt cheeks had a thing to do with peeing. For the next 20 years or so, I thought your butt cheeks and your kidneys were just about one and the same. I'm still not too sure on the mechanics of it all. By the summer of '99, I'd passed the first grade. Thank you, Miss Colvin, wherever you may be. And I was living my happy little life on the levee down in the outskirts of Clutcheville. Clutcheville, Louisiana is just big enough, barely, to have a skirt and an outer bit. One might call the entire community an outskirt, the crusty, callousy remnants of the more popular Natchitoches Parish with its festivals and lights. Not me, though. Clutcheville is its own brand of weird. Natchitoches is where you go to work, where you get your groceries, and live if you've got some means about you. Clutcheville is where you dig in and rot. Maybe that's not entirely fair. Clutcheville feels like dry grass. You've got to cut the grass and let it dry a little bit before you bale it, before it's any use to the farmers who need to feed their animals in the winter. Clutcheville feels like the moment just after the cutter is cut and your pawpaw goes over the hay with the rake to row it. That hay looks so doggone fluffy, I'd imagine jumping right on in and snuggling up. I'd never do that, though, on account of it itching me to hell and back and the possibility, an extreme likelihood, of some big-ass zigzag spiders living in the midst of those grassy pillows. Even still, it was always a nice thought. Clutcheville is kind of like that. It looks like comfort, but not the fancy man's kind of comfort. That I'll never understand, but it is comforting that you hit Main Street of Clutcheville soon as you turn off Highway 1, roll under the caution light and over the Cane River Bridge. The big pile of junk I'm assuming used to be a building, the only thing left of it, a set of stairs at some matoir or boudoir or coutee, painted bright green with the words, "Home of the Bulldogs," and posted a flagpole with the stars and stripes hanging ripped and ragged and limp in the stale, fishy air. Comfort. Mr. Spurgeon's big old house that's now just a dump of sunken-in drywall and bricks and weeds. The front yard that housed Mr. Doug Brosse's fireworks stand. Comfort. The big pink house James used to live in, snugged up right between the Catholic cemetery and St. John the Baptist Catholic Church that had the only real basketball goal within 20 miles. Comfort. Hook a left and follow 491 until the blacktop turns to dirt and a big old hill is in front of your face. That's comfort. That's home. That's where the grassy pillows trick you into thinking it'd be all right to wiggle right on in, soak in the sun, and take a little nap. Just a minute, just long enough for the critters that lie in the dark to creep up on you underneath your waistband and touch you in places you were told were bad, private, and not meant to be acknowledged. When I was 6 years old, I didn't know too much about none of that. The bad and ugly stuff. I'd seen Daddy Roger beat on my mama a few times that I remember, but nothing real terrible apart from that. Then me and my brother died, and I found out real fast just what ugly was. My mama told me many years later that Daddy Roger came over one night and just never left. In my more or less grown-up mind, I thought, how in the hell do you just let a strange man move himself right on into your house with just you and your 2 young daughters? But then I remember what it was like being in my 20s and feeling the warmth of a man's soul attention. You get swept up. Stupid things seem like pretty good ideas. It's nice not having to be the only adult in the room, the solitary decision maker. The pressure lifts just a little. I guess I get it. I've never known myself to be so gracious. Let's see if it sticks. Roger was born on April 5th of 1956. He always told us he was one boy out of 9 kids. Aunt Linda was the youngest and only girl. I always thought of it was pretty neat that my mama was the youngest and only girl out of 7 kids, and Daddy Roger's sister was basically a mirror. My child mind made sense of things by going back to that little coincidence and believing them finding each other was a minor miracle. Now I don't really see much correlation between the two, but I'm guessing the ghost of me was trying to make up some connection between my mama and my would-be daddy, my want-to-be daddy, since my real daddy didn't want to be with me. I'm not too sure on the specifics about how Mama and Roger met, because when I asked my mama about him, things are never retold in a way that seems totally reliable. I guess when you live with someone for well over a decade and a threat to burn the house down while everyone sleeps is just another Tuesday, maybe things get a little tinged in the retelling. I do know Roger met Mama because of Billy. Billy lived on the front half of my Papa Alvin's pasture on Slater Nichols Road. Only a short row of dang pampas grass bushes as big as three grown men separated Billy's place from my Aunt Linda's. She had an above-ground pool with a gate and a treehouse. Billy had a homemade chicken wire pen where he kept all his natural light cans and a little shed where he dried his upside-down tomato plants. I'm not privy to how Mama and Aunt Linda struck up a friendship. Mama was never a smoker, and Aunt Linda was the brand ambassador for Virginia Slims, if there ever was one, back in the early 90s. Aunt Linda could have made a killing before they killed her. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know for a fact it was the cigs that did her in. I'll ask her later when I get to heaven. Either way, I'm told Mama's tight young ass met Aunt Linda's bar stools many a day when she and Billy lived over in Grant Parish. I never lived there. They moved to the levee by the time I was born, but Erin was there. I think I'm told she spent the first year or so of her life out there. Thank God she got out. No hate to Grant Parish, but I'll take saying I'm from Clutcherville any day of the week over that place. Ain't nothing but no teeth and blown up meth labs out there. Bless their hearts. You work with what you got, I guess. Anyhow, Mom and Aunt Linda were friends, or so I'm told, and Aunt Linda had a nice little habit of taking in strays. That's how I'm guessing her big brother Roger came to stay in her back bedroom for a while. That's how I'm guessing he met his meal ticket. I mean, his future common-law wife. I mean, the future bane of his existence. Oh, hell, I apologize. That's how he met my mama. That's how my life ended before it barely got started. Roger had divorced Tracy. Tracy, God bless America, looked like she'd been hit by a freight train after she fell off the ugly tree, and she smelled like a pack of Rottweilers and menthols. Bless her. She and Roger had 4 children together starting back in '75. My mama was about 6 when Roger started procreating, just to put things into perspective. Their kids were Brandon, Brandy, Christopher, and Jessica. I think Jessica might have been about 13 when I met her back in '95. I don't remember that too much on account of I'd barely been breathing on this earth for more than a minute by that point. They were just kind of always there. Brandon was anyways. The others we didn't see too much of growing up on account of they hated Roger's guts, and I'd come to find out later, and they were whole grown-ass adults. I'm guessing daughters and ex-wives aren't too particularly fond of the fact that their daddies and ex-husbands go off and start shacking up with a 20-something-year-old baby and her 2 toddlers. I'm guessing they felt like he'd upgraded. My mama can't cook worth a dang, but I'd say she's a catch. Quirky as hell, but a catch just the same. I'm guessing once Tracy and Roger called it quits, he moved in with his little sister. He didn't have a job to speak of. I was told countless times through my youth of how he'd been a bulldozer operator, and somehow his 2 feet had gotten crushed on the job way back when. His feet were shaped all funny, almost like foot binding, for many years. Apparently, he had a boatload of back surgeries too. The numbers 5 or 9 keep popping up in my head, so take your pick. There were a lot of them. Because of all this, he was classified as disabled, I was told. He didn't have a regular job, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know that he had much farming experience. But he sure as hell acted like he was king of the crop when I was growing up. Regardless of how, I remember one second piled up on the couch, screaming my little bald baby head off while Billy holds a dark duffel bag over his right shoulder, yells stuff at my mama, and then punches the wall in the living room of the old house. Leaves never to return, and then waking up, not the next day, but you catch my meaning. And Roger was just always there, fussing me because I called him Mr. Roger. He told me that I was to call him Daddy because he was my daddy. I remember even at 2 and 3 years old, that not feeling quite right. He took us to Burger King though. That was nice to me, eating out, you know. He'd fix our hair for school, too. Mama worked for the Natchez Parish Highway Department with her ex-boyfriend, Jimmy, so she'd have to get up real early. Roger would braid our hair while we watched Zaboomafoo on early morning PBS. Sometimes we'd watch Bob Ross. Aaron really liked his show on account of she's always been an artist. He was everything I'd never had, Roger was. He taught me how to ride my bike with no training wheels, and let me tell you what, I was a fantastic bike rider. I wore the brakes right out on my little red bike. I rode that sucker so much. He taught me how to fish too. I did a couple of kids' bass fishing tournaments out in Colfax once upon a time. He taught me how to play guitar and got me to singing. I still sing, but I don't do any of that other stuff anymore. Hadn't touched a guitar or a fishing pole in probably 20 years. My bike is still sitting on flats underneath the lean-to. It all tastes like ashes now anyways. I had this field trip that spring before I died. I think we went to Melrose Plantation, out in Melrose Dairy, something or other. Almost literally spitting distance from our school, but still it was fun. I believe they had like a craft show or something. There were swings and picnics, and we took a buggy ride, the whole class. I got to hold the reins and took pictures with the mules. There's photos of me. I think I'm missing a tooth or two, and Roger put his hat on my head. I wore a blue and white striped shirt and short set with pink sandals. My blindingly blonde hair sat on my shoulders, and my bangs were straight across my little round forehead. I smiled so hard you couldn't hardly see my eyes. My pawpaw would smile like that. When I'm really happy, I still do. I think it's kind of embarrassing, but I think that was the happiest moment of my life before I passed away. I can remember how hot it was. My scalp was kind of cooking a little bit. That's why Roger put his hat on my head. I thought it was just so all my friends could know I was his daughter, so they all knew I belonged to someone, that someone wanted me, someone claimed me as their own. School ended, and Roger had yet to introduce Aaron and me to the labors of farm life. Mama was still holding down a job back then, so we didn't have to work for our survival too much. That would end soon. It all would. But for those few weeks between the end of May and the 4th of July, I was happy. I remember feeling light like the air that blew through my mama's wind chimes and made the little pipes clink together. It hardly was anything to notice, but it was playful, and it existed until it didn't. Brandon drove up from wherever it was he lived back then, maybe Denham Springs, I think, just about every weekend. We had good fishing on the levee. The Red River bar pits had a mess of white perch. God bless it, I wish someone would fry me up some good white perch. I don't know that I'd have the heart to eat it, but damn it, the thought of it makes me happy. Either way, Brandon was always out at our house back then. He was an outdoorsman if I ever saw one. Him and Daddy Roger woke up before the sun, and that rooster Aaron spray-painted green. They'd spend just about the whole day out in the bar pits. A lot of the time, he'd come up just him, but a good chunk of the time, he'd bring his 2 kids, Jax and Hannah, and his wife, Christy. Daddy Roger would call her Cal, and she'd laugh and squeak out this glassy, "Dad," whine that made me sour in the face. I wouldn't squeal if someone called me Cal. I'd just hit them in the head. I don't remember where they would sleep because the old house only had 2 bedrooms. Wasn't much bigger than a shoebox, but I'm guessing they shoved Aaron and me on the floor somewhere to make room for baby Jax and the rest of them. I'm not mad. One of my favorite things still to this day is a good old-fashioned blank pallet strewn out on the living room floor with a good movie playing. Comfort. This particular weekend, the whole family came up. I remember because the night before, Hannah had told Brandon that Aaron and me were being mean to her. We weren't. I know that for a fact, because even though she was only 2 or 3 years younger than me, she was mean as a damn snake. Something evil had always been all over that girl. Anyhow, Brandon popped his head into mine and Aaron's room and fussed us all. He told us to get along or we'd all get in trouble. He was fair like that. Daddy Roger would always believe Hannah anytime she did anything, and we'd get beat to shit because of it. It got worse after I died. Brandon didn't ask for specifics. He just fussed us all. I can get on board with that because I know I'm no angel, and I wasn't then, I'm sure. But at least he didn't beat the hell out of us because his kids said we were being ugly. I do remember getting mad though. I might have cut my eyes at him for fussing us when it was his trash daughter that was being a butthole to us. But at 6 years old, I didn't know how to articulate that, so I just pouted. The next morning, I woke up before everyone. I don't remember what I did, but I remember I had this broken toy in my hands the whole day. I think it might have centered me, kept me as safe as I could be. It was white, but not white, that off-white, 90s kind of white. I had no idea what it was I was playing with, but I liked it. It had a little circular piece on top and a square base and a switch I would press, and the circle would spin. I liked the spinning, and I liked the whirring sound it made. It wasn't until about 6 years or so ago that I realized what that toy was. It was the broken bottom piece of a toy blender. Like when little kids play house and they have fake kitchen tools. It was the broken bottom piece of that. I'm sure it was something cast off from a cousin or maybe a toy mama found at the dumpster. I wouldn't let go of that thing. Everyone started to rummage around, but the house was still fairly quiet. People not saying too much on account of still being half asleep. Daddy Roger was impatient. He was ready to get up and everyone get going. We had plans to go down the road to Momo and Pawpaw's house for lunch. It was a holiday after all. At night, we would normally shoot fireworks from the top of the levee. Pawpaw might have even snagged us some cardboard boxes we could tear up and use to slide down the side of the levee. None of that happened, though. I died that day, remember? Daddy Roger was all in a hurry. I don't know why, but I remember shadowing him. I was always up his butt. He was fussing about people being lazy and such, and said that he was going to go find Brandon so that by the time he got back, everyone would be ready to head down the road. I don't remember asking to go with him. I just remember being in the front passenger seat of the truck. I think it was the old white F-150 I would later drive the four-wheeler trailer down the side of and scratch. I could be wrong about that, though, on having the truck at the time. The scratch? Well, I wish to God I was wrong about that, too. But no, I'm not. It happened. We drove with the windows down. I remember because the crunch of gravel underneath the wheels has always been familiar to me, almost soothing. That heat that poured in from the July sun and the dust that caught in my nose means I'm home. We drove fast down the levee towards Miss Maurie's place. I have no earthly idea who Miss Maurie is or was or how she's connected to the levee. I just know her old rickety house was to the left of the garbage bins and ours and everyone else's that inhabited the levee was to the right. I don't think I've ever laid eyes on Miss Maurie, and I ain't too sure she ever existed, but I've seen the house, and even though my uncle currently lives on that piece of land, my mama owns it and told me years ago that when she dies, I get it. I don't know if that'll hold up now because I'd rather stand on my head butt naked than tell my uncle, hey, get off my grass. But we went and Brandon wasn't there. I would never see Brandon again. Daddy Roger might have. I'm not sure. It was a closed casket because of all the red wasp stings. Over 250 from the waist up. That phrase just comes spilling out my mouth anytime I mention my brother. I've probably heard it said over 250,000 times. It's gruesome, but life on the levee turned out to be that way. He'd gone down towards Momo's house. We could see her house from where we found the P-road. We'd stopped back by the old house to pick up Mama and Aaron. I can't seem to remember why we hadn't gotten Jax and Hannah. Maybe the fussing Brandon gave us that night before had happened a different weekend, because that day, July 4th of 99, I don't remember seeing any of them. Just Mama, Aaron, and Daddy Roger. Maybe I do make things up on account of a story. That's what I was being told countless times after all this. When I told on my cousin Shannon for putting his hands in places I didn't even know the names of because he was a teenage boy and thought I was asleep. Megan, that didn't really happen. Megan, don't you ever say that again. When the blood vessels in my legs, all the way from my hips to my ankles burst, and I was temporarily paralyzed. Megan, get up. Aaron, leave her there. She can carry her ass on up to the couch or she'll get tore up. Megan, quit playing. Tell the truth and just stand up and walk. Didn't hear any of that kind of talk when they were pulling my blood at the hospital and telling my mama I had 6 hours to live. Turns out I lived a little bit longer than that. Could have been the misdiagnosis, or it could have just been because I was a ghost. I died the moment that Ford skidded to a stop just a few yards away from my cousin Wanda's ramp. The same ramp I'd run for my life up just about 11 years later whenever I was convinced Shannon was coming after me to either finish what he started or to make sure I wouldn't tell. I died as I looked out the little window in the back cab. Mama's little green Piro out near that far bank of the bar pit, a fishing pole and an empty life jacket floating next to it in the dirty water, right by an old swamp tree, red wasp nest hanging fat, heavy, and open from a branch. I died as I sat, stock still, apart from my spinning little blender bottom, Daddy Roger barreling out of the truck, running faster than any white man I'd ever seen, stripping himself of his thin, white short-sleeve button-down and, I believe, his belt, Brownie. He gave his two favorite belts names and had the buckles talk to us in the coming months and years just before he beat whatever hell we had left in us. His starched Wrangler jeans he left on, but his cowboy boots went flying, hidden somewhere in the tall Johnson grass. Mama screamed at Aaron to run to Wanda's and call 911, just as I saw Daddy Roger dive into the swampy water. He might have come up with leeches, but I think he'd have been all right with that if he could have just found Brandon. I remember thinking to myself how much like a superhero he looked diving into that water. I didn't really know much about superheroes apart from He-Man, but the bulging back muscles and taut white skin seemed to match up. I remember his strokes, smooth and fast, chopping and slicing through the water, desperate love just trying to connect. A daddy so filled with love and maybe a little bit of regret, just trying to find his little boy. The man that came out that water wasn't who went in, or maybe it was, and he'd just been hiding real well. The dirt water slopped off his skin, whatever he'd been using to hide who he truly was. It took 3 days, I'm told, to find Brandon's body. He was 6 feet from the shore. He'd swam maybe 20 feet or so as he was dying. Remember, I'm not too good at math, but my mind's eye's ruler seems to think he swam just about the whole width of the bar pit. That's a pretty good stretch. He'd almost made it, but the poison from the wasp killed him. A few years ago, a cousin of mine that doesn't really talk to me anymore on account of I don't believe his bullshit, argued with me whenever he heard me tell someone my brother drowned. He told me that wasn't true and that he'd been told that he went into anaphylactic shock. Well, buddy, I was 6 and my parents had to tell me my brother, who had just told me goodnight a few hours before, had up and died while he was fishing. I'm guessing saying he drowned was just a little bit easier for a child to understand. I didn't know what anaphylactic shock meant. I mean, hell, I thought butt cheeks and kidneys were the same damn thing. He died, and so did I. The night terror started soon after that, I'm told. People swarmed the levee that weekend. I walked out on Momo's porch and saw Daddy Roger on Pawpaw's porch swing, just staring at the wooden floor. Aunt Linda was smoking some Slims next to him. Pawpaw didn't look terribly pleased. Daddy Roger had pulled a knife on some reporter that had come out to do a story on the accident. I never really got the details, only what I picked up here and there, going from the kitchen back to my room. Apparently the reporter had asked Daddy Roger the wrong question, and he thought it was pretty insensitive, so he pulled his knife and almost gutted the man were it not for Mama. I'm sure people won't believe me when I say that, though. Children make up stuff, according to the people I grew up with, or maybe they just meant me. I don't remember Daddy Roger doing our hair anymore or going on any field trips after Brandon died. The old house roof had been threatening to fall in for a long time, but it wasn't until the custody battle between Daddy Roger and Tracy, and Daddy Roger and Tracy, and Diane and Norman, and everybody plus Daddy Roger against Christy, did Daddy Roger finally decide the old house wasn't very safe for us to inhabit. They got married in 2001 and bought a double-wide trailer because it looked better to the court. I have an old VHS of this. He goes around the 3-bedroom trailer narrating each room as he records the fake figure of a loving family we were. See what a nice, happy place for kids to grow up in? We still didn't get custody of Jackson Hannah. Something about Daddy Roger's jail time in the late 80s didn't sit too well with the judge, even if his girls later said that they had lied about it all. Whatever was left in that bar pit, I'd give my leg to have it back. Doesn't do too much good to wish and wonder, but I remember my first life was happy. Sure, I'd seen Daddy Roger beat my mama up, smash the telephone against her face and all that a few times, but he braided my hair and he took me to town to eat Burger King. After a few years of feeling weird that I had to call a strange man Daddy, it became more or less normal. At least someone wanted me to call him Daddy. My actual daddy didn't seem to want the title, and who knows? Maybe I wouldn't have died. Maybe I would have grown up and never had strange hands in all my secret places, deep voices and scratchy beards in my ears telling me that I feel nice, telling me to make sure I don't tell my mama. Maybe I would have been better protected and my sister wouldn't have had to stop old Jimmy from exploring my little 10-year-old hollowed body, giving herself up as tribute, had whatever come up from that water just stayed hidden, hadn't killed Brandon, hadn't killed me, hadn't have washed the pretty pretend off of Daddy Roger. Maybe I wouldn't have bobos and old straight scars my little baby boy asks me about. Maybe I wouldn't have to fib a little and tell him, oh, Mommy just hurt herself a long time ago. Maybe eventually he wouldn't grow up, look back in his memories, and realize that those bobos weren't accidents. Maybe he wouldn't have a ghost for a mama. The dirty water took that from me. It took Brandon as a sacrifice, like a sweet virgin on the altar of some gruesome god, and revived the monster that lied dormant, holed up deep in Daddy's bones. I remember maybe a year or two before Daddy Roger finally left for the last time. I was snooping in Aaron's room. By that point, he'd given up all hope of ever having custody of his grandchildren. He'd already threatened to shoot my mama's head off and drink her blood a few times, but surprisingly, that wasn't what made him give up and leave the levee. He'd been talking to himself for years and years, maybe haunted by Brandon's ghost or mine, or maybe haunted by his own failings. Whoever he was talking to, we couldn't see, and he'd finally let it slip that Erin had been making passes at him. She hadn't. She was barely 14. Mama says now she got scared he'd do something to Erin. She said she'd start believing maybe Daddy Roger wouldn't tell him the truth about his past life. When I was snooping, though, he was still around. Erin was either out in the pasture riding her horse or she was gone with a boyfriend. Daddy Roger vehemently forbade us to have any boyfriends or friends of any kind. I wouldn't have my first real sleepover at my house until I was 17 years old and a senior in high school. I don't know how, but Erin wasn't in the house, so I had a chance to see what all she kept from me. We didn't talk much during those days. It was kind of every man for himself. Stay hidden or stay hurt. I found her box of treasures. She didn't really keep a journal that I found, but she did have letters that she'd either written to herself or to the secret boyfriend. His name was also Brandon. He died too, but not while they were dating. In those letters, I read things that scared the hell out of me. I know now that I was a selfish child, dying like I did, leaving my sister alone to wilt, to wither, and rot all by herself. I had to die so I could survive. I won't divulge her secrets, but I think it hit me in that moment that Brandon and I weren't the only ones that had passed away that day. I don't know if Erin died, but she sure as hell hadn't been living. Daddy Roger had sloughed off his daddy skin and come up a monster that I can't really describe without using watered-down words and cliches that still wouldn't hit just what happened to us on that piece of property. The pillows of grass snapped at the root, ran away on the wind. The heat incubated his hate for anything that wasn't his son's breathing body. The dirty water bubbled up and out, staining us all, marking us as not Brandon, marking us as prime prey for his grief to chew on. I'll skip to the end if that's all right. It's not all bad, the living dead life. It was mostly bad, but now I've lived almost longer than the span of terrible that is starting to lean more towards the good side of things. That's something I never saw coming. Honestly, I didn't expect to keep breathing past 16, so anything past 2008 is a win. I was 6 when I died, and I still turned up living. I tried to not live for a long time, and there's a laundry list of men and some women that lined up to try and put me in the dirt right next to Brandon. I don't know why it didn't work. That's not my business. But I'm here, and not the monster that came up out of the dirty water. If I may, a friend of mine told me to seduce them and then break their hearts, but I've been trying to do the reverse. So, if I could just read a smidge of the 6 Wives of Tommy Pride. Yes, sir. I think that'd leave you on a good note. So, this is the 6 Wives of Tommy Pride, and I would like to read this in remembrance of my daddy Billy, the original Tommy Pride. This is the Louisiana Last Will and Testament of Thomas Irvin Pride. I, Thomas Irvin Pride, resident in the city of Montgomery, parish of Grant, state of Louisiana, being of sound mind, not acting under duress or undue influence, and fully understanding the nature and extent of all my property and of this disposition thereof, do hereby make, publish, and declare this document to be my last will and testament, and hereby revoke any and all other wills. Section 1. Family information. Thomas Tommy Irvin Pride, heretofore referred to as Tommy, was married but 6 times. He was blessed beyond measure with a head full of thick auburn curls and one hell of a personality, since he graced the earth with his presence on July 23, 1952, until his last dying breath, wheretofore he shall let the lawyers put in the proper place, date, and time, as he is currently above ground at the time of this written record. Because of said blessings from above, Tommy garnered the attention of quite a few young women throughout his lifetime. It is this deep and lasting connection with women that has colored the landscape of Tommy's life. Where many men in their time on earth with splashes from 1, maybe 2 women, Mr. Pride has tasted and seen every shade of the rainbow. Women, he asserts, are God's greatest gift to him and he to them. In 1969, Tommy Pride enlisted as a builder in the United States Navy. He was stationed at the naval base in New Orleans, where he met his first wife, Darlene May Hall. After acquiring the written permission and blessing of her father, Tommy and Darlene were wed at the Justice of the Peace in Abita Springs, Louisiana in August of '69. Tommy was 18 and Darlene was 15. In March of 1970, Tommy became the proud father of a baby girl, Annie Mae Pride. July of '70, Tommy and Darlene divorced, citing irreconcilable differences. Mr. Pride would like it stated in the record that these differences were on account of the foolish ways in which the first and former Mrs. Pride ran a household. He would like it stated for the record that potato salad never has and never will include onions, and anyone who adds them is a blasted fool. After an accident on base resulting in hearing loss in Tommy's left ear, he was honorably discharged from service and moved back home to Montgomery. Obtaining a job as a master plumber with Alexandria Cooling Associates, Tommy met Tanya Bulow. In May of '71, Tommy and Tanya were married, and in June of '71, Tammy Bernice Pride was born. Citing irreconcilable differences, Tommy and Tanya dissolved their marriage. Tommy Pride would like it stated for the record that these differences were due to the mountainous expanse Tammy's head was shoved up her daddy's ass. From '71 until '74, Mr. Tommy Pride did not marry. He spent his time plumbing, fishing, and building his home on Ayat Lake. Mr. Tommy Pride would like it mentioned in the record that throughout this time he met and kept the company of many fine women, and while he cannot recall all their names, the effect they had on his heart and his bones remains deeply etched within himself. Mr. Pride would like it noted that women are exotic and peculiar creatures, but the moment shared together is as sweet and satisfying as hooking a slew of blue cats on a trot line. It's one of his favorite pastimes and his special skills. Christmas of '74, Tommy Pride and Belinda Packard Patrick welcomed daughters Amanda and Jessica. New Year's Day of 75, Tommy and Belinda were wed. They lived and loved 3 long years. Mr. Tommy Pride would like it noted in the record that Mrs. Pride's citation of adultery in the divorce proceedings was inaccurate. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Tommy Pride minded his manners. He allowed no woman to take his last name. He spent his time plumbing, fishing, and cultivating herbs on his land out in the woods. He would like it known his discovery of the upside-down tomato plant should have landed him in the textbooks. And he would like it very much if his nephew, Little Ricky, would take care to hide his buds and make sure Louise doesn't let her dope-headed son, Travis, haul off with a single leaf. He would also like it known that Kim Watson was a dear friend and should have a heartfelt mention on the occasion of his passing. He would also like it known that there is no evidence her 3 children have any claim to his name. They look more like David Wheeler down the road. They've got his nose. In '86, Tommy took a job in Marco, where he met Darla Dunn. Tommy was 34. Miss Dunn was 18. Mr. Tommy would like it mentioned that his wedding to the 3rd Mrs. Pride was by far his favorite. He would like it written that William Dunn can throw one hell of a party. He hated my guts, but damn it if he can't party. He would also like it known that no, his father-in-law did not, in fact, pull a gun on him and chase him off the property. It was a knife. Regardless of his strained relations with his in-laws, Darla and Tommy were married for 4 years and welcomed 2 beautiful girls into the world, Mahaley and Billy. Mr. Tommy would like it mentioned that Darla, she couldn't cook worth the flip, but she sure was nice to look at. Kim Watson was the reason for the divorce. Mr. Tommy Pride wholeheartedly accepts this narrative. He would also like it recorded that yes, he did call Darla Darlene when he wanted to piss her off, and yes, he did find it funny. The 4th Mrs. Pride was not Bessie Sue Jenkins, although she wanted to be. That is all Mr. Tommy will say about that. The 5th Mrs. Pride was Louise Trahan, and Mr. Tommy Pride will say no more about Louise, other than he should have never picked her up on the side of Highway 71 back in '95. He should have let the sun cook her up within an inch of her life and let the buzzards gnaw on her innards until kingdom come. He should have never wasted an ounce of his shine on her lot lizard-looking ass. He knows you will scour the earth trying to find where he hid what little money you didn't steal, Louise, but you'll never find it. The marriage lasted 6 weeks. They had no children. Her son Travis is not his. Just look at that ugly bastard. That's no fruit of Tommy's loins. All Mr. Pride would like to say about his 5th wife was that she looked a lot older than she was, and her daddy should have had a better handle on that girl. The 6th and final Mrs. Pride was the 2nd Mrs. Pride. Belinda Patrick Pride and Tommy reconciled in 2007 after being apart for over 20 years. She overlooked the 18 years of missed child support because he took her to the Paragon and let her eat all the crab legs she could hold in her gullet. Mr. Tommy Pride would like it stated that while he missed most birthdays, Christmases, graduations, and weddings of all 6 of his daughters, it is his request that they name at least one of their children, boy or girl, after him in whatever fashion they see fit. However, he prefers Tommy with a Y or Tommy with an IE. He would also like it stated that he did not have any favorite daughter. Tammy just moved down the road, so she was closest. Section 2. Expenses and taxes. I hereby authorize my personal representative to settle and discharge in his or her absolute direction any claims made against my estate. Except in Louise Trahan, any debt owed to her is a lie. She took all she's going to get. Taxes are a dead-gum scam. However, let it be known that I wouldn't have had any debts or taxes if it wouldn't have been for Bessie Sue Jenkins calling the IRS on me. The only bank that can be trusted is a safe under my bed. And no, Louise, I don't care if you know where it is because 1, you ain't getting into it, and 2, little Ricky has been told to snatch it up and hide it just as soon as the undertaker puts me in the back of his truck. I nominate and appoint Tammy Bernice Pride LaSalle of Grant Parish of Verda, State of Louisiana, as personal representative of my estate, and I request that she be appointed my personal representative. If my personal representative fails or ceases to so serve, then I nominate Richard, Little Ricky, Dennis Pride of Grant Parish. If they can't do it, then I guess give it to my sister Joanne, but not if she's still shacking up with that Bruce guy. Then he goes about giving some stuff to his daughters. It's very nice of him. And towards the end, here we go. Except to the extent that I have included them in this will, you have intentionally been excluded. I let you out on purpose, Bobby Watkins, you sorry son of a bitch. I know you told my daddy I was the one that left that gate open back in 1962. I got my ass tore up for letting them goats get out, and we both know it was you that done it. That 16-foot aluminum boat we went on is going to Little Ricky. My name's on the title, not yours. Kim Watson's kids don't get anything of mine. I'm telling you, those are David Wheeler's kids. Discretionary powers of personal representative. Just be nice to your sisters, Tammy. Contesting beneficiary. If any beneficiary under this will contests or attacks this will, Tammy, don't you give them anything. Don't even tell them I'm dead. And in conclusion, be it known that I, Thomas, Irvin Pride, do make this my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills. I meant every word I said. See you in hell, Louise. Thank you. You can ask me questions if you want. Yes.
What are two strengths that you feel that you gained in this process of working on?
Just the thesis in general, just like that time period. Being honest and being vulnerable, which maybe are the same thing, but I'll make them be two separate things. Would you like me to elaborate? Well, I was telling Ellen Ann, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever written. I ended on a funny note, but I tend to hide behind that because it's easy. You know, I don't know much about myself, but I do know I'm funny. So it was easy to write that kind of stuff. But the pieces like the one that I read before, Dirtwater, being real honest and real vulnerable was real hard. But having the courage and the respect of my audience, i.e. you guys, there was a greater gain in keeping it to myself and just giving y'all a bunch of laughs, if that answers your question. Yes.
What you just raised about honesty and vulnerability, just found like it's the question that I wanted to ask you. This is such a unique form that you've come up with of the mostly true, fictional memoir. And that's a contested space. You know, when I'm thinking about James Fry and the memoir that he presented as 100% true. I'd love to hear more about how you feel fiction allowed you to explore the honesty and vulnerability as well as the non-fiction. Does that question make sense?
That's a really good question. Thank you. I think almost everybody in here could be tired of me bringing up Dorothy Allison, but I think I'm going to talk about that lady till the day I die. My favorite book is Bastard Out of Carolina, and Dorothy Allison says, like in her interviews, it is fiction. However, I don't know exactly how she puts it, but she does say like, inspired by, true events or something like that. But I remember one interview that I read, and I'll make my point, I'll answer your question. But I remember one interview I read where she said that putting it in fiction gave her enough distance that she could look at the ugliness of what had happened and get it out. And get it out in a tangible way without being overwhelming for herself and others. And I agree with that. So with the fiction part, because there's quite a few that are, well, they're all mostly true, but then there are a few sprinkled in there that I could say, but I won't say for legal reasons, is pretty much nonfiction. But I think, to answer your question, I think the ones that turned out to be fiction, like for real, straight up fiction, had to be that way. Otherwise, it would have been too painful for not just myself, but my sister, Erin, who I didn't say at the beginning, but if it weren't for my sister protecting me, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing, and that's a really big thing. And so while I was writing this, even though it's the hardest thing I've ever done, I had to wrestle with myself which stories to fictionalize, because it would give my sister and myself something that we never got originally. But then there were moments where the story I wanted to be fiction fought me and told me, no, you need to be honest about what actually happened, if not for the benefit of, other people who may relate, then at least for you and Erin's healing. And so I think I've done that fairly well, handling some pretty ugly stuff like Dorothy Allison, and making it in a way where it's not a trauma dump, and it's not overwhelming, and it's not, hey, look at me, all these bad things happened to me, but reclaiming agency and power for some people who deserve it. Because my sister Erin, I owe her my life, and this is the least I could do for her. And so, even if that's in made-up stories. But did I answer your question? I think? Okay, thank you. Alexis, did you have something? Okay. You heard me say mama? I taught her how to say mama today. That's okay.
Since you mentioned about self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
what do you now believe? How does your self-esteem help you grow?
Yeah. So she said, since I mentioned that L&N, the biggest thing L&N did for me is built self-esteem that I never had. And so what do I now believe? Christopher will be real happy to hear this. Damn it, I did it. And I can do it. I can do it again. I think I'm pretty good at this. So I'm strutting, man. So I think now, whereas before, L&N doesn't know the extent of it, because I didn't want her worrying about me all the time. She was so great, y'all. If nothing else, even if I wrote a whole pile of crap, I'm just glad I got to write it with you. I know it's not crap, but I really didn't think, and I know as writers, we're like, ooh, woe is me, poor John Donne and all those guys, they didn't think they were worth a hill of beans. And I thought that. I was like, I'm just going to write this because L&N says she likes it, and I have to because I paid money, But through the process of it, and through her encouragement, and my family's encouragement, and my friends' encouragement, I was like, you know what? This does sound pretty good. And I mean, who writes stories about goat castration and it sound real nice, I did that, So, did that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
So your writing is, like you said, you're funny, you're hilarious, you have us all laughing, but you also touch on these very personal things that a lot of people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So other people need to know
Mm-hmm.
that this is out there. So this is like fiction, non-fiction, comedy, humor, kind of all rolled into one. So what are your hopes for it? And when you write a query letter, what are you going to say this? I want to know where I can find it.
Oh, Well, starting with the back end first. Whatever I put in the query letter, that's what I'm just going to do what Ellen Ann tells me. Like, whatever she tells me to do, I'm doing it. She tells me to jump off the house, I'm going to do it. I ain't going to question. But so, I don't know. I don't know what I would put in the song. I'd be like, hey, I'm real Southern and I'm real cute. Will you please represent me? But I don't know. I don't know about that part. I hadn't figured it out quite yet. But that's why I told my committee today that I want, no matter how old I get, no matter what I do, no matter where I go, I always want to remain teachable. And I want to surround myself with people who know more than me and who have experienced more than me so that I can just know I'm catching up with them, you know? And so where I hope this would go, I really just hope I've never actually thought about this, not 100%. Like, yeah, you want to see it in a bookstore or stuff like that. But if I'm being 100% honest, where I want this to go, I don't care if it's just one copy. I want one person to get one copy of this and go tell my mama that I did that. Because I want my mama to, maybe not read it, but I want my mama to see this and be proud, you know. And then if if we put it, it'd be super cool if I was at Friendly City Books. So that'll be like the next layer. But if and I'm not doing that so everybody be like, oh, she's so sweet. No, I think really, honestly, this is good for me. Anything more than that is laying out, and because this is the first thing I've ever done for myself. Getting an MFA, it's a real big deal to me. It's a real big deal for everybody, but it's a real big deal to me. And for this collection, I'd really like my mama to see it with a cover and with my name on it, and for her to be proud. And then I'll send it out to all y'all. Anything else? I know I've taken up quite a bit of your time. All right, Ellen Ann brought us king cake. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, everyone. Remember, tomorrow night we'll be at Friendly City Books. Good night.